My name is Rosa. I am 61 years old. I live alone in a small cottage by the coast of Galicia in Spain. This house belonged to my parents. I was born here, married here, and raised my only son here. The walls still carry laughter from long ago, but now the silence is louder. My husband Javier passed away 9 years ago. Since then, the rooms have felt bigger and emptier. I spend my days cleaning, reading old letters, and watering the flowers he planted. I try not to cry when I look at his chair or touch his books. My son Daniel lives in Australia now. He left for university when he was 20, and he never truly came back. He studied engineering, found a job, met a woman named Hannah, and built a life far away. He has 2 daughters I have only seen in photos. At first, he used to write emails and call me. He even sent postcards from Sydney. But then, the calls became shorter and less frequent. The emails stopped. His voice faded like the sound of music down a long street. Still, I waited. I checked my phone every morning. I smiled at his old messages, pretending they were new. I kept all his childhood drawings in a folder under my bed. I prayed for him every night, even if he forgot me. One afternoon, something strange happened. I heard a knock on the door. No one ever knocked on my door anymore. The mail was usually dropped into the box. Visitors? There were none. I opened it slowly, and my heart jumped. It was Daniel. He stood there quietly, with a suitcase beside him. He looked tired, thinner than before, with dark circles under his eyes. But when I saw his face, all I felt was joy. Without thinking, I pulled him into a hug. I could hardly believe he was really there. After all these years, my son had come back home. I made tea and brought out the almond biscuits I always kept for special days. He sat at the kitchen table, looking around at the familiar walls and old furniture. He said everything looked the same. I told him nothing had changed, except that it had become quieter, slower, older. We didn't speak much at first. There was too much to say, and too many feelings between the words. But when he finally started talking, I listened closely. He said he missed me and that life had been too busy. Work, family, the pressure to succeed, it had all kept him far away. I didn't want to blame him. I knew how life could be. But I had waited for so long, and his absence had left deep cracks in my heart. Then he told me something unexpected. He said he wanted to take me with him to Australia. He said I should not live alone anymore. He said his house had space, and that his daughters wanted to meet their grandmother. He said I could have my own room, my own life, but surrounded by family. I didn't know what to say. I looked around the house, this house that held my whole life. Every chair, every cup, every picture on the wall had meaning. I couldn't imagine leaving it all behind. But at the same time, Daniel was my only child. I had dreamed of being close to him again. Was this the answer I had waited for? That night, I lay in bed thinking, I remembered the day Javier and I brought Daniel home from the hospital. I remembered his small feet running across this same floor. I remembered the way he laughed when he was little. So much love had been shared here. Could I really leave it all behind? The next morning, Daniel looked serious. He said the house was old and far from help. He said it was time to sell it and move forward. He offered to help with everything. He said the money would be useful for the future, for my new life in Australia. I asked him if he was sure. He smiled and said this was the right thing for both of us. In the days that followed, I packed my things slowly. I gave away some furniture to the neighbors. I donated old clothes to the church. I kept a small suitcase with a few dresses, my prayer book, and Javier's scarf. The rest I left behind. Daniel helped me go to the office and sign the documents. The house was sold. The money was transferred to his account so we could manage the flight and the move. It all felt fast, like I was walking through a dream. One moment I was here, the next I was closing the door for the last time. I kissed the wall gently and whispered goodbye to Javier. At the airport, I felt nervous and cold. Daniel held my suitcase and told me to sit down. He said the gate was far and that he would get a wheelchair for me. He told me to wait there. He said he would return in 5 minutes. I watched him walk away. I believed him. I believed that we were finally together again. I believed that this was the beginning of something new. I looked around the airport, full of people and noise, but I felt calm. I had my son again. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I waited quietly, but my heart began to feel uneasy. I looked at every man who passed, hoping one of them was Daniel. But it wasn't him. After 30 minutes, I asked a young woman at the counter if she had seen my son. I told her he went to get a wheelchair and hadn't returned. She looked confused and said no one had asked for one. I sat again and waited. 40 minutes passed. Then 50. I clutched my bag tightly. My hands were cold. I didn't know what to think. An officer in a dark uniform noticed me. He came over and asked if I was waiting for someone. I told him everything. He looked at me kindly and asked for Daniel's name and photo. I showed him the ticket and the picture from my bag. He said he would check something and asked me to wait. I nodded and sat still. My heart was beating faster now. I kept looking at the entrance, but I already knew the truth. The officer returned and sat beside me. He spoke gently, like someone delivering bad news. He said Daniel had already boarded the flight, alone. I could not speak. I could not cry. I stared at the floor and held Javier's scarf to my chest. My son had left me behind. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The officer did not say much more after that. He just sat quietly beside me, his eyes watching my hands as they trembled in my lap. I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't understand what had just happened. A part of me still believed that Daniel would come running back, explaining everything, telling me it was a mistake, that he had forgotten something, or that the flight was delayed. But I knew in my heart he was gone, and he had taken everything. I whispered softly, more to myself than to the officer. He promised me. He said we would go together. He said I wouldn't be alone anymore. The officer nodded slowly. I'm very sorry, Senora. I closed my eyes. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I had already sold my house. I had given him everything I had. I trusted him because he was my son. But now, all I had was a small suitcase and a scarf. No home, no money, no family. The airport felt too big now, too loud. I was small and invisible, lost in a crowd of strangers. I didn't know what to do. I had no phone credit, no contacts, no address to return to. Even the woman at the check-in desk had looked at me like I didn't belong. The officer spoke again. Senora, do you have anyone to call? I shook my head. No. There's no one. He paused, looked at me for a long moment, then stood up. Come with me. You can't stay here. Let me take you somewhere safe. I hesitated. I had never gone anywhere with a stranger, but something about his voice felt calm and honest. I stood up slowly, holding on to the armrest for balance. He carried my suitcase and walked beside me. As we walked through the airport, I felt embarrassed. Everyone was in a rush, running to catch flights, laughing, taking selfies. And I, an old woman, was walking beside a police officer like a lost child. We stopped near the parking area. He opened the passenger door of a small car and helped me in gently. It's a short drive, he said. My home is not far. His name was Miguel. He told me he lived with his wife Elena. He spoke about her with love. He said she worked at a small library and loved baking bread on Sundays. I'll explain to her, he said. She'll understand. I nodded, still too shocked to speak much. When we arrived, Elena opened the door before he could knock. She looked surprised to see me, but she welcomed me inside without asking too many questions. She took my coat, guided me to the couch, and gave me a warm blanket. Then she made tea. Real tea. Not the kind from airport machines. As I held the warm cup, my hands stopped shaking for the first time. Miguel spoke quietly to Elena in the kitchen. I didn't try to listen, but I caught some words. Airport. Alone. Abandoned. She looked at me now and then, her eyes soft and sad. After a while, she came and sat beside me. You are safe now, she said gently. Please don't worry. I nodded, and tears slipped down my cheeks. I wasn't even sure why I was crying. Was it sadness? Anger? Relief? Maybe all of it. That night, they let me sleep in their guest room. Elena brought me clean towels and warm pajamas. She even placed a small plant on the windowsill. For peace, she said. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought of Daniel, already in the air, thousands of miles away. I wondered if he was thinking of me. I wondered if he had planned everything, if he had ever really meant to take me with him. I tried to sleep, but memories kept me awake. The next morning, Miguel was already gone for work. Elena made me breakfast: fresh bread, cheese, and hot milk. She asked if I wanted to go for a walk later. I told her I didn't feel ready. "Take your time," she said. "This is your home for now. There's no rush." I sat near the window most of that day, watching the trees outside. I held Javier's scarf tightly. I kept thinking, what did I do wrong? But there was no answer. Days passed. Miguel came home each evening with something small for me: a puzzle book, some fruit, a hairbrush. He didn't ask for anything in return. Elena treated me like a mother, not a guest. One evening, Miguel came home looking pale. He walked slowly, his head down. Elena noticed something was wrong and followed him into the kitchen. I listened from the hall. I heard his voice, low, full of pain. "Flight Q78. It crashed." Elena gasped. "No survivors?" Miguel didn't answer at first. Then he said, "All gone." My legs weakened. I stepped back into the living room, sat down, and stared at the wall. He hadn't told me. He didn't want to hurt me more. He thought I needed to be protected. And maybe I did. Because even though Daniel had betrayed me, even though he had abandoned me, he was still my son. I still prayed for him. I still dreamed he would come back and say sorry. Miguel came into the room slowly. He sat next to me. I didn't ask him to explain. I already knew. I looked at him and said, "Thank you for not telling me before." He nodded. "I wanted to let you rest first." I cried that night, quietly, so Elena wouldn't hear. I cried for the son who had left me, and for the child I had loved all my life. I cried for the loss, for the betrayal, and for the little boy who used to sleep in my arms. But I also cried because I wasn't alone anymore. I had no blood family now, but I had something else. Kindness. Miguel and Elena gave me what my own son could not: care, attention, and honesty. One day, Elena asked me if I ever wanted to go back to the village, to my old house. I shook my head. "I already lost that house," I said. "But I found a new home here." The days began to pass more softly. The pain in my chest didn't disappear, but it became quieter, like an old song that no longer made me cry. Just think. I still thought of Daniel every morning. I still kept the photo of him as a little boy on the nightstand beside my bed. But now, when I looked at his smiling face, I no longer asked why. I simply whispered, "I hope you found peace." Elena brought me into her life slowly and gently, as if she was planting a flower and waiting for it to bloom. She didn't push me to talk or do things. She just included me in small ways. One morning, she asked if I could help her fold the laundry. Another day, she invited me to help with baking. She said her bread never rose the way her mother's did. I laughed softly and showed her how to warm the bowl first. That day, the bread came out perfect. We both smiled like children. Miguel continued working long hours, but he always found time for me. He would bring home small things: a book of poems, a scarf with flowers like the ones in my old garden, or my favorite apricot jam. He didn't say much, but I could feel his heart in every little act. One night I told him, "You remind me of Javier." His eyes softened. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me," he replied. On Sundays, we all went to the park together. Elena packed a basket with sandwiches and apples, and I brought along a thermos of mint tea. We sat on a bench under the trees. I watched young families run around us. Children laughed. Dogs barked. The world moved forward. And I, an old woman who had been forgotten, was sitting in the middle of it, not invisible, but seen. One evening, as we returned from the park, we passed a small community center. A sign was posted outside. Volunteers needed. Help the elderly. Teach a skill. Share a story. Elena stopped and said, "You have so much to share, Rosa. Would you like to try?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure anyone wanted to hear my stories, but something inside me, a small light, flickered and said, "Maybe." The next week, I visited the center. It smelled like soup and paint. A woman named Carmen welcomed me with a hug. She asked if I could teach a small cooking class, simple Spanish recipes, something easy and warm. I smiled. I know how to make lentil stew that will make them cry. Every Wednesday after that, I wore a clean apron and taught 5 older ladies and 2 young students how to chop onions without tears, how to cook rice that didn't stick, and how to fold the edges of an empanada just right. They called me Doña Rosa. I hadn't been called that in years. I shared stories too, about Javier, about my garden, and yes, about Daniel. I didn't speak with anger. I told the truth, but gently. Some of them nodded with understanding. Others listened with wide eyes. One girl said, "You should write your life down." I laughed and said, "Who would want to read it?" But her words stayed with me. One morning, while I was walking to the market, I passed a bookshop. A notebook in the window caught my eye. It had a blue cover with white stars. I walked inside, picked it up, and bought it with the coins I had in my pocket. That night, I began to write. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I wrote about my childhood, about falling in love with Javier, about holding Daniel's tiny hand for the first time. I wrote about waiting, about silence, about the moment I heard the knock on the door. I wrote about betrayal and about kindness, about losing a son and gaining something unexpected. Every time I finished a page, I felt lighter, like the pain was no longer locked inside my chest, but gently resting on paper where I could look at it, forgive it, and let it go. Miguel found the notebook once. I had left it on the table by accident. He didn't read it. He just placed a bookmark inside and said, "When you're ready to share it, I'd love to listen." Elena grew a small garden in their backyard. She said it reminded her of mine. She let me choose the seeds. I picked marigolds, lavender, and rosemary. She built a wooden bench for me beside it. I sat there every morning, greeting the sun. One afternoon, Miguel brought home a small photo frame. Inside it was a picture of all three of us, me, Elena, and Miguel, sitting together on the park bench. Someone at the center had taken it during one of our picnics. Under the photo, he had written in careful handwriting, "Our Rosa, our family." I cried when I saw it, not from sadness, but from something else, something that felt like healing. Time moved forward. A year passed, then another. I became part of this new world. People at the market knew my name. Children from the center hugged me when they saw me. My cooking class grew bigger. I taught more than recipes. I taught memory and care. Sometimes I still thought of Daniel. I dreamed of him, not as the man who left me, but as the boy who ran through the garden shouting, "Mama, look!" I held that version of him close. It hurt less that way. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Elena said, "Do you ever think about what might have happened if Daniel hadn't left?" I thought for a long moment and then said, "If he hadn't left, I would never have come here. I would never have met you. I would never have known that family is not always made of blood, but of hearts." Miguel reached across the table and held my hand, and in that moment, I knew I had lost a son, but I had found something just as precious: love, dignity, and a home where I was wanted. Not everything that breaks us destroys us. Some things break us open, so light can come in. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon.